My name is Jocelyn, and I'm an Ontario pork producer. My husband and I have a farrow to finish farm in southwestern Ontario. Biosecurity is important to all pork producers for the simple fact that we care about the health of our animals and want to keep disease out of our barns. When I call a service provider to come out to do work at one of my barns, I will discuss, in addition to the work that needs to be done, what is expected of them in terms of my biosecurity protocols as soon as they drive up to my barn. Producers should not be afraid to tell service providers about their biosecurity protocols and what needs to be followed, and service providers should not be afraid to ask the producers what they need to do. The first question I will ask is where they have been recently, have they visited a farm, and if so, what type of farm was it and how long ago they were there. I will then clarify where to enter a property, where to park, and what to do once they arrive. Depending on which barn they are visiting, I will ask them to call me or go to the door and ring the bell. I'll also advise them of the signage to look out for. I will have them sign into our visitor's logbook, which helps producers keep track of who is in the barn should there be an emergency, and is an important tool in tracking disease risk. I always specify what type of barn they will be doing work at, if they will be encountering any animals, and if so, what kind of animals, sows, weaners, or market hogs. It's important that I provide these details because not all barns are the same, or will have the same type of entry or the same level of disease risk. For example, a sow barn has a constant flow of animals and it's at a higher risk of disease, whereas a finishing barn may not have any animals on the day the work is being done. Service providers might not need all their tools, so it's important to ask the producer what tools they already have available in the barn. Any specialized tools brought into the barn will need to be sanitized. We ask that service providers plan their trip when coming to the barn, knowing exactly what they will need so that they're not entering and re-entering multiple times into the barn, which could cause a risk for disease. Upon leaving the barn, service providers should wipe down their tools and ideally, before going to another barn, give the tools some downtime in a warm space. So no two barns are the same. For example, there's a Danish style entry. In a Danish entry, you will be asked to remove your outside dirty footwear and clothing, swing your legs over the bench, and change into clean footwear and clothing provided by the producer that never leaves the barn. When you're leaving, you'll reverse that, and you'll take off the barn clothing and footwear, sit on the bench, flip to the other side, and put on your dirty clothing and proceed to exit the barn. You might also visit a farm that requires you not only to leave your outside clothing in the dirty area, but also fully showering before entering into the barn and putting on the barn footwear and clothing. As with the Danish entry, when leaving, service providers would reverse this by showering out of the barn. When we're setting up our appointment with you, we'll let you know whether we provide or whether we don't provide clothing for you for in the barn. If we provide it, we'll ask you what size of clothing and what size of footwear you'll be needing. After a phone call with your service provider, it's good practice to send an email of your biosecurity protocols or have them posted outside your door or have a paper copy available for when they enter. As producers, biosecurity is our top priority. We know that it will keep our disease risk low and our animals healthy. However, there is one exception to this rule, and that is when there's a human emergency in the barn. We will set our biosecurity protocols aside because at the end of the day, human life takes priority. When calling 911, we would ensure to provide as much additional information about the barn, the animals within, and any other health and safety issues they might encounter, such as chemicals, machinery, or gases. We would then make sure there is someone to meet the emergency personnel at the most convenient entrance. The most important thing for a service provider to remember is not just to enter the barn. If you're unclear of any of the biosecurity protocols, ask the producer. We're more than happy to answer any of the questions you may have. The better communication between the service provider and the producer about biosecurity prior to entering the barn, the better. It's not just for the people involved, but for the health and safety of our animals.